Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade wasn't just another adventure sequel. It was Spielberg's desperate attempt to redeem the franchise after Temple of Doom's darkness nearly destroyed it. Behind that perfectly polished final cut lurked production nightmares that almost killed Harrison Ford, sent Sean Connery to the hospital, and forced the crew to rebuild entire ancient cities from scratch after catastrophic location problems. Spielberg himself called it the most difficult film I've ever made that actually turned out well. Today I'm revealing 20 weird facts about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade that even die-hard fans don't know. And stick around for our bonus fact, the shocking original ending that was actually filmed but locked away in Spielberg's vault, never to see the light of day. Let's dive into the truth behind the Last Crusade. Fact 1. The third film was almost completely different. Indiana Jones wasn't supposed to search for the Holy Grail. He was meant to hunt Nazis in a haunted Scottish castle. Steven Spielberg rejected writer Chris Columbus's draft titled Indiana Jones and the Monkey King that would have sent Indy to Africa seeking a fountain of youth. Not because it was bad, but because it was too similar to the artifact hunt in Raiders. George Lucas then pushed for a script about the holy spear that pierced Christ's side during crucifixion. Spielberg shot that down too. After 5 rejected scripts and 3 years of development hell, Lucas finally suggested the Holy Grail Schwartz, which Spielberg initially hated, calling it too ethereal. The director only agreed when screenwriter Jeffrey Boehm connected it to Indiana's relationship with his father. It wasn't about finding a magical cup, Spielberg later explained. It was about finding a father. Fact 2. Sean Connery was only 12 years older than Harrison Ford. When casting Henry Jones Sr., Spielberg needed someone who could believably intimidate Indiana Jones himself. Not an easy feat when your hero is Harrison Ford. Sean Connery wasn't just Spielberg's first choice. He was the only choice. The problem? Connery was only 58 during filming, while Harrison Ford was 46, a mere 12-year age gap between father and son. The makeup department performed minor miracles aging Connery, while the script established that Henry had Indy very late in life. But the real magic came from Connery himself, who completely rewrote his character. The script portrayed Henry Jones as a bumbling academic. Connery transformed him into a formidable, acerbic intellectual who could reduce his action hero son to a stammering schoolboy with just a disapproving glance. Ford later admitted, "And acting intimidated by Sean Connery requires no acting whatsoever." Fact 3. River Phoenix never met Harrison Ford before filming. The opening sequence featuring young Indiana Jones wasn't in the original script. It was added after Spielberg saw River Phoenix in Stand By Me and declared, "This kid is going to be a major star." But Phoenix faced an impossible challenge. He had to perfectly mimic Harrison Ford's mannerisms without ever having met him. The solution? Phoenix spent hours studying Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom on VHS, taking extensive notes on Ford's gestures, voice patterns, and expressions. Remarkably, Phoenix and Ford didn't meet until the first day of shooting the train sequence. When Ford finally watched Phoenix's performance, he was stunned. "It was like watching my own ghost," Ford told reporters. "He didn't just imitate me, he got inside my skin somehow." The meeting of young and old Indy was the only scene Phoenix and Ford ever filmed together. Fact 4. Harrison Ford almost died filming the tank sequence. The iconic tank chase nearly ended in tragedy. Not once, but 3 separate times. During rehearsals, the tank, a fully functional 28-ton steel behemoth, veered off course and crashed through a camera setup, missing cinematographer Douglas Slocum by inches. But that was just the beginning. While filming a stunt where Indy rides alongside the tank on horseback, Ford's saddle came loose. He clung to the horse's mane for nearly 30 terrifying seconds as the animal galloped at full speed alongside the moving tank. The crew couldn't hear his shouts over the tank's engine. The third incident proved most serious. While filming inside the tank, A sudden brake failure sent Ford slamming into the metal interior. He tore 3 ligaments in his knee but refused to halt production. "They gave me a shot of painkiller and wrapped my leg," Ford recalled. "We finished the day's shoot. The medic said I was insane." Fact 5. Sean Connery hospitalized the director with one line. The chemistry between Ford and Connery wasn't always scripted. Their best moments came from improvisation, including the iconic "she talks in her sleep" line about Elsa. That throwaway joke wasn't in the script. Connery ad-libbed it during a take, catching everyone off guard. Ford's stunned reaction was genuine. He broke character and burst out laughing so hard the take was ruined. But the real victim was Steven Spielberg. The director was drinking milk when Connery delivered the line. He laughed so violently that milk shot out his nose and he began choking. A crew member had to perform the Heimlich maneuver. Spielberg spent the night in a Venetian hospital with damaged nasal passages. "Sean's improvised line cost us a day of shooting and sent me to the hospital," Spielberg later said. "Totally worth it for the best joke in the movie." Fact 6. The rats were more expensive than the stars. The catacombs sequence beneath Venice required thousands of rats scurrying around the actors, but not just any rats would do. European health regulations prohibited using wild rats due to disease concerns. Regular pet store rats wouldn't work either. They were too clean and friendly looking. The solution? The production team bred 2,000 special rats specifically for the film. They had to be bred, trained, housed, and fed for months. The rats required a full-time staff of 40 handlers and special climate-controlled trailers. Each rat cost roughly $300 to maintain throughout production. The rat budget alone exceeded $600,000 in 1988, more than Sean Connery's base salary. But the nightmare didn't end there. The rats kept escaping. Venetian hotels reported mysterious rat infestations throughout filming. The production company quietly paid over $50,000 in damages to local businesses. Spielberg later confessed, "Those damn rats cost me more than Harrison Ford." Fact 7. The real Holy Grail was stored in a hotel minibar. The Holy Grail, cinema's most famous cup, was actually one of 14 identical props made by the art department. The hero grail used for close-ups wasn't stored in a high-security vault. It lived in property master Barry Wilkinson's hotel room minibar. It wasn't reverence, Wilkinson revealed years later. The grail was made of fragile painted plaster. The minibar was the only place with consistent humidity control to prevent it from cracking in the desert heat. This casual storage nearly caused disaster. A hotel maid, not recognizing its significance, removed it while cleaning and almost threw it away. Wilkinson discovered it in a trash cart moments before garbage collection. As a safety measure, he began leaving handwritten notes on the minibar. "Please do not remove cup, literally a holy grail." The irony wasn't lost on the crew. The actual Holy Grail was hidden in plain sight, just like in the film's storyline. Fact 8. The most dangerous stunt wasn't even in the final film. The most perilous sequence filmed for Last Crusade never made the final cut. It involved Indiana Jones escaping a burning Zeppelin by grabbing onto a weather balloon that carried him into the sky. Stuntman Vic Armstrong dangled from a real hot air balloon 2,000 feet above the Austrian Alps with nothing but a safety wire that kept detaching. The harness malfunctioned 3 times, Armstrong revealed. "For several seconds, I was hanging by my fingertips above a lethal drop." The sequence took 5 days to shoot and cost over $1 million. When Spielberg saw the rough cut, he immediately decided to scrap the entire sequence. Not because it didn't work, it was spectacular, but because it disrupted the father-son narrative flow. "We risked a man's life for footage we didn't use," Spielberg admitted. "That's the decision I regret most in my career." The footage remains in Lucasfilm's archives, never seen by the public. Fact 9. The library scene caused a diplomatic incident. The library sequence where Indy searches for clues about the Grail was supposed to film in the Biblioteca Marciana in Venice. 3 days before shooting, Italian authorities revoked permits, citing concerns about national treasures. The real reason? A government official objected to Indiana Jones damaging library property in the script. With sets already built and schedules locked, Spielberg made a desperate call to his friend, director Federico Fellini. Within hours, Fellini had arranged a meeting with Italy's Minister of Culture. The solution? A bizarre diplomatic agreement requiring the production to donate $80,000 for library restorations, hire 20 Italian film students as apprentices, and strangest of all, include a disclaimer in the credits that no actual library books were harmed during filming. The oddest demand came from a senior librarian who insisted the fictional library in the film couldn't be called Biblioteca anything. That's why it's referred to only as the library with no specific name, a diplomatic compromise. Fact 10. The Zeppelin scene almost caused international outrage. The Zeppelin sequence nearly created an international incident. In the original script, Indiana and Henry escape Nazi agents by boarding a commercial Zeppelin leaving Germany. When Nazi officials check papers mid-flight, Indiana throws the agent out the window to his death. Test audiences found the cold-blooded murder jarring and unsympathetic. Spielberg hastily rewrote and reshot the scene, adding the line, "No ticket," as a comedic beat after throwing the Nazi off the Zeppelin. But that wasn't the real controversy. German tourism officials threatened legal action over depicting Lufthansa, thinly disguised in the film, as Nazi-controlled in 1938, historically accurate but politically sensitive. And go ahead and like and subscribe because I'm about to reveal how this diplomatic tension forced Lucas and Spielberg to make emergency edits just 2 weeks before the worldwide premiere, changes that altered how we perceive Indiana Jones as a character. Fact 11. Steven Spielberg trolled Harrison Ford throughout filming. Spielberg mercilessly tormented Harrison Ford about his fear of snakes, a real phobia that originated during Raiders of the Lost Ark. Throughout Last Crusade, crew members would find rubber snakes in Ford's dressing room, lunchbox, and even his car. The director's most devious prank came during the Venice catacombs scene. Ford was told the tunnel would be filled with mechanical rats, but Spielberg secretly instructed animal handlers to release a single live, non-venomous snake among the mechanical rats without telling Ford. When Ford spotted the real snake mid-scene, his look of shock and disgust was genuine. That's the take Spielberg used in the final cut. I heard Harrison screaming expletives that would make a sailor blush, recalled Sean Connery. Then I heard Spielberg laughing so hard I thought he'd crack a rib. That's when I knew they had a relationship beyond director and actor. Fact 12. The Indiana Jones name was banned from marketing in Japan. In Japan, Last Crusade couldn't legally use Indiana Jones in its title or marketing. A Japanese businessman had trademarked Indiana Jones for a chain of gentlemen's clubs years before Lucas secured international rights. Rather than pay the $4 million licensing fee, Lucasfilm rebranded the entire movie. In Japan, the film was released as Professor Henry Jones and the Last Holy Cup. All merchandise, posters, and even Harrison Ford's name in credits had to be changed to Henry Jones Jr. Translators struggled to adapt the father-son dynamic when both characters were technically Henry Jones. The Japanese dub contains a bizarre workaround. Indy is exclusively referred to as Junior throughout the entire film. This created an unintentional comedy beat when Sean Connery delivers his stern Junior lines, which in Japanese became redundant since everyone called him Junior anyway. Ford was reportedly furious about the situation, especially when Japanese press kept addressing him as Professor Henry during interviews. Fact 13. A monkey caused the most expensive production delay. The desert sequence where Indiana fights on a tank included a trained monkey performing Nazi salutes. Animal trainer Bob Gale spent 3 months teaching the Capuchin monkey, named Katie, to perform on cue. What producers didn't account for was Katie's intense dislike of Sean Connery. During a crucial scene, Katie was supposed to salute and then jump onto the tank. Instead, she leaped onto Connery's head, pulled out a small clump of his toupee, and fled into the Andalusian countryside. Production halted for 3 days while animal experts tracked Katie through the Spanish desert. We had 250 crew members sitting idle at $25,000 per hour because of a monkey with a grudge against Sean Connery, producer Robert Watts recalled. The monkey was finally found in a local farmer's orchard, still clutching strands from Connery's hairpiece. Connery, demonstrating his legendary professionalism, simply quipped, "The monkey has excellent taste. This toupee is rather dreadful." Fact 14. The Grail Knight actor never met the main cast. The ancient Grail Knight who delivers the film's most memorable line, "He chose poorly," never actually met Harrison Ford or Sean Connery. Actor Robert Edison, then 81, filmed all his scenes 6 weeks after principal photography wrapped. By then, Ford and Connery had moved on to other projects. Edison performed his entire role talking to tennis balls on sticks, marking where the actors would be positioned. The Knight's chamber wasn't even a real set, but a partial construction with the rest filled in by matte paintings. Sound technicians added echo effects to Edison's voice in post-production to suggest the vast chamber. Despite never meeting his co-stars, Edison's performance became one of the most quoted in the entire franchise. Tragically, he passed away just 2 years after the film's release, making The Grail Knight his final film role. In a poetic parallel to his character, Edison had been a stage actor for over 60 years, a knight of British theater waiting for his moment of recognition. Fact 15. Sean Connery created a secret backstory that changed the film. Sean Connery developed an elaborate backstory for Henry Jones Sr. that he never shared with the cast or crew until filming ended. In Connery's mind, Henry had worked as a spy during World War I, explaining his facility with firearms and cool demeanor under fire. This wasn't in the script, but Connery played every scene with this history informing his character. When Henry expertly fires a Webley revolver to save Indiana during the tank battle, Connery insisted on using authentic WWI shooting techniques. The props department had to modify the gun to accommodate his specific handling. Spielberg was baffled by Connery's peculiar requests but trusted his instincts. Only at the wrap party did Connery reveal his secret character history. Spielberg was so impressed that elements of Connery's backstory were incorporated into the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles TV series, which established Henry Jones Sr. had indeed been a spy in the Great War. Sean didn't just play the character, Spielberg later said. He knew more about Henry Jones than we did. Fact 16. Harrison Ford saved a woman's life during filming. While shooting in Spain's Tabernas Desert, production halted when a crew member discovered a wrecked car hidden in a ravine with an injured woman trapped inside. Local authorities estimated she had been there for over 24 hours in the scorching heat. The remote location meant emergency services would take hours to arrive. Harrison Ford, who is a licensed pilot, took control of the situation. He repurposed the film's helicopter, used for aerial shots, to airlift the woman to a hospital in Almeria. Ford personally assisted the medic on board during the 40-minute flight. The woman survived with no lasting injuries but never knew her rescuer was Indiana Jones himself. Ford refused all publicity about the incident, and it remained unknown until a Spanish paramedic mentioned it years later in a local newspaper. Harrison just said, "We have a chopper, we have a situation, let's solve it," recalled Assistant Director David Tomblin. Then he went right back to work afterward without mentioning it again. Fact 17. The famous tank chase used no computer effects. The spectacular tank chase, considered one of cinema's greatest action sequences, used zero computer effects or miniatures. Everything was practical. The tank was a fully operational replica built from scratch, weighing 28 tons with a functioning engine and treads. It could reach speeds of 30 miles an hour and actually crushed everything in its path. The sequence took 10 weeks to film across 3 different locations. When the tank crashes through the cliff wall, it's the real full-size tank actually smashing through a constructed wall. The dangerous interior shots of actors being thrown around inside the tank were filmed with the vehicle in actual motion. Most astonishing of all, the moment when Indiana Jones is dragged behind the tank wasn't a dummy or stunt double for the wide shots. It was Harrison Ford himself. After multiple failed attempts with stunt performers, Ford insisted on doing it personally. That sequence represented the absolute pinnacle of pre-digital filmmaking, Spielberg said. Every time I see a modern CGI action scene, I think, we did that for real with the tank? Fact 18. The film contains a secret tribute to Alfred Hitchcock. Steven Spielberg hid an elaborate tribute to Alfred Hitchcock in the film that few noticed. The entire Venice boat chase sequence is a shot-for-shot homage to Hitchcock's The 39 Steps. Spielberg even used identical camera angles and cutting patterns. The most direct reference comes when Indiana escapes the burning Venetian palazzo by running across the roof, a direct visual quote from Hitchcock's To Catch a Thief starring Cary Grant. Even the musical cue momentarily shifts to a style reminiscent of Hitchcock composer Bernard Herrmann. Most fans missed an even subtler nod. The 3 challenges to reach the Grail correspond to the 3-act structure Hitchcock pioneered. The breath of God, mechanical blades, represents the initiating incident. The word of God, stepping stones, represents the complication, and the path of God, leap of faith, represents the resolution. Hitchcock taught me everything about suspense, Spielberg acknowledged. The entire 3rd act of Last Crusade is structured using his principles of escalating tension. Fact 19. The film's Wilhelm scream was a secret contest. The famous Wilhelm scream, a stock sound effect used in countless films, appears in all Indiana Jones movies as an inside joke among sound designers. In Last Crusade, it occurs when a Nazi is thrown from the tank. But there's a secret behind this particular Wilhelm that sound designer Ben Burtt revealed years later. Lucasfilm employees were running an underground contest to see who could place the Wilhelm scream in the most creative way in their productions. Burtt wanted to win by having the highest profile Wilhelm ever. He secretly recorded 3 different versions and let Spielberg unknowingly choose which Nazi would get the honor. The contest had real stakes. A $200 pot collected from participants, including people working on Star Wars and other Lucasfilm productions. Burtt won the pool and used his winnings to buy vintage sound equipment that later created the lightsaber sounds for the Star Wars prequels. That single Wilhelm scream in Last Crusade indirectly gave us the sound of Qui-Gon Jinn's lightsaber, Burtt revealed. Fact 20. The film's ending was completely different until the last minute. The ending where the Grail cannot leave the temple wasn't in the original script or even the first cut of the film. In the original ending, Indiana and his father successfully take the Grail back to the United States. The final scene showed the Grail sitting on Henry's desk at Marshall College as he records its powers for academic study. Test audiences rejected this ending completely. They felt it undermined the film's spiritual message and robbed the Grail of its mystery. With just 6 weeks before release, Spielberg hastily reconceived the ending and reassembled the cast for reshoots. The cave collapse, Elsa's death, and Indy's leap of faith to save his father were all last-minute additions. Even more surprising, the line "Indiana, let it go" was recorded separately by Sean Connery in a London studio and added in post-production. If you watch carefully, Connery's mouth doesn't quite match the words in that shot. "We originally had a neat, happy ending," Spielberg admitted, "but we learned that some treasures aren't meant to be possessed." In the film's final scene at Petra, Indiana Jones' iconic hat displays a continuity error that went undetected for 3 decades. When Indy first enters the temple, His hat shows visible sweat stains and desert dust. But when he drinks from the Grail, his hat appears perfectly clean in medium shots, then dusty again in close-ups. This wasn't a typical continuity mistake. Harrison Ford had actually gone through 7 identical hats during production, each showing different wear patterns. The hat from the clean shots was actually from scenes filmed 4 months earlier that were repurposed in editing. What makes this truly remarkable is that Steven Spielberg noticed the error during final editing, but decided to leave it in as a deliberate Easter egg, a test to see if anyone would catch it. For 30 years, no one publicly identified the inconsistency until a fan posted a frame-by-frame analysis on Reddit in 2019. Spielberg confirmed the intentional error in a 2020 interview. "I've been waiting 30 years for someone to spot that hat," Spielberg said. "I thought it would take maybe 6 months, not 3 decades." Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade wasn't just the conclusion of a trilogy, it was a masterclass in redemption, both for the character and the franchise itself. Born from the ashes of Temple of Doom's controversy, it emerged as perhaps the most beloved entry in the series by returning to what made Raiders magical while adding emotional depth through the father-son relationship. What began as Spielberg's attempt to apologize for the darkness of Temple of Doom became something far more personal. A story about fathers and sons, faith and doubt, and the true meaning of immortality. The real Holy Grail wasn't the cup that grants eternal life, it was the reconciliation between Indiana and Henry Jones. If you enjoyed discovering these hidden stories behind Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, hit subscribe for more incredible behind-the-scenes revelations about your favorite films. And remember, in the immortal words of the Grail Knight, it's not about finding treasures, but the wisdom to choose them wisely.